Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The warning siren screamed through the Coalition monitoring station with the raw, metallic fury of a dying machine. It wasn't a gentle alert. It wasn't a routine ping. It was the kind of sound that punched straight into the gut and ripped every ounce of calm from the air. Commander Yoon nearly spilled out of his chair as it went off, the hot cup of coffee he'd been lifting sloshing across his uniform in a steaming arc. But he barely noticed the burn. He knew exactly what that alarm meant. Something was inside the Kepler war zone. Something that should not be there. "Report!" he barked, raising his voice above the shrieking klaxons. Lieutenant Han was already moving. His fingers flashed across his console, data scrolling rapidly across his screens. Yoon watched the young officer's expression drain from confusion to shock, and finally to a pale, almost ghostly stillness. "Sir, we have a ship entering Sector 77, Han said. "Single signature, but—" He swallowed hard. "It's fast. Faster than anything in our database." Yoon strode to his station. "Show me." The main tactical display expanded, projecting the Kepler sector in stark, violent detail. The war zone looked like a graveyard suspended in space. Twisted metal, drifting hulks, and clusters of debris that had once been proud starships. For 2 long years, 3 of the most powerful civilizations in this part of the galaxy had been tearing each other apart over the quantum crystal fields buried within the asteroid belts. And those 2 years had left a mark. Tens of thousands of dead, economies shattered, colonies ruined, and whole fleets reduced to wreckage. The Hive Collective with their enormous living warships. The Nexus Empire with their crystalline armadas. The Void Confederation with their plasma-forged vessels. 3 superpowers locked in endless slaughter. No sane being wandered into that killing field. Not unless they were suicidal. "Zoom in," Yoon ordered. The image tightened until a single moving object came into view. A sleek vessel gliding through space like a silver arrow. No rough edges, no jagged armor plating, no hull markings the station recognized. Alien, clearly, but not Hive, Nexus, or Void. Han's voice shook. "Sir, look at the energy readings." Numbers surged in columns along the screen. Numbers that should not exist. "That can't be accurate," Yoon said. "Recalibrate." "I already did, sir. 3 times. Han exhaled shakily. "This ship is outputting more power than a Nexus battlecruiser." Yoon felt something cold slide into his stomach. A ship that compact should never produce energy levels like that. Not without violating every known principle of physics. Not without tech centuries ahead of any civilization in the region. "What species does it belong to?" Yoon demanded. Han scanned through classification charts, ship silhouettes, and archetype signatures. Nothing matched. Then suddenly, "Wait," Han whispered. "It's broadcasting a message." "Put it through." The station's speakers crackled, then stabilized into a calm, steady voice. One that sounded so out of place in the murderous chaos of the Kepler sector that both officers froze. "This is Captain Lee Day of the human vessel Indomitable," the voice said. "We are responding to distress calls from this sector." Yoon felt the entire room stop breathing. "Repeat. This is the human vessel Indomitable entering the Kepler war zone to assist civilians in distress." Silence fell. The heavy, suffocating kind that presses against the ears. Yoon stared at the screen. "Did he say human?" "Yes, sir," Han replied softly. "Human." Humans were new, barely spacefaring. A species only recently discovered on the ragged edge of the Orion Arm. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards. Their military was a footnote in most databases. Yoon had only read a handful of reports about them. Small blue planet, carbon-based, cooperative but unsophisticated. Several analysts had even labeled them harmless and unthreatening. Yet here they were, inside the deadliest battleground in 100 light years, announcing themselves like they were greeting a neighbor. "Pull up everything we have on humans," Yoon ordered, his voice tight. Han complied. The report was embarrassingly thin. Humans were barely 3 centuries into FTL travel. Their starships were modest, their weapons simple, their combat experience limited to a few localized conflicts on planetary surfaces. According to every metric, humans were among the least threatening species in the galaxy. And yet this single, unremarkable species had just entered a battlefield occupied by hundreds of Apex-level warships. "Sir," Han said suddenly, "the fleets are reacting." Yoon turned sharply. On the central display, 3 titanic forces, Hive, Nexus, and Void, shifted formation. Their ships pivoted, engines igniting like storms. Hundreds of vessels began converging toward the lone silver dot. Predators sensing prey. "They're going to annihilate it," Han whispered. Yoon said nothing. Not because he disagreed, but because deep down, he knew something else. Something impossible was unfolding. Humans should not be here. Humans should not even know the war zone existed. Humans certainly shouldn't be claiming they were answering distress calls. His pulse quickened. What kind of species walked directly into hell for strangers? What kind of captain declared their presence openly while surrounded by 3 hostile militaries? What kind of ship dared to face 600 warships alone? Yoon exhaled, barely above a whisper. Either they're the bravest fools in the galaxy, or we've underestimated humans more than anyone ever imagined. The moment the human transmission echoed through the Kepler sector, the war shifted. Not in strategy, not in firepower, but in intent. For the first time in 2 years, the Hive Collective, the Nexus Empire, and the Void Confederation all paused their slaughter, only for a fraction of a second, before turning as one toward the newcomer. 3 war machines, ancient and merciless, pivoted their killing instruments toward a vessel the size of a cargo shuttle. And that single human ship kept flying forward, unbothered. On the Coalition monitoring screen, icons representing entire armadas began to peel away from their battle lines. The converging motion looked almost choreographed, like predators circling the same prey. Lieutenant Han's voice trembled. "Hive fleet is redirecting. 200 bioships moving to intercept." The display showed the unmistakable red pulses of the Hive Collective's living vessels. They surged like a swarm of enraged titans, massive creatures engineered into starships, their bioluminescent carapaces throbbing with predatory hunger. Their weapons were organs. Their armor was exoskeleton. Their purpose was annihilation. "They've shifted course fully," Han continued. "They're targeting the human ship." "Of course they are," Yoon muttered. To them, that ship is an intruder wandering into a nest. But the alarms didn't stop. "More incoming," Han said breathlessly. "The Nexus fleet, crystal dreadnoughts, 150 of them, all locking onto the same coordinates." The Nexus Empire's vessels drifted into view. Enormous constructs of razor-edged crystal, refracting starlight into kaleidoscopic beams that split into weaponized frequencies. They shimmered with deadly beauty. Each ship was a fortress forged from crystalline matter grown, not manufactured. Elegant, precise, merciless. "They don't tolerate disorder," Yoon said grimly, "and a human vessel is disorder in its purest form to them." Then Han flinched as a new symbol flared on the tactical map. "Void Confederation plasma vessels approaching. 180 ships. Sir, they're phasing through debris fields. Direct vector toward the human vessel." Void ships were the strangest of the 3. Amorphous, semi-transparent constructs shaped from stabilized plasma and electromagnetic fields. They flickered like ghosts, their forms shifting unpredictably as if they were more energy than matter. Their weapons could vaporize armor and phase through defenses. 3 entire fleets, 600 ships, all accelerating toward one tiny silver dot. The Coalition monitoring room grew cold. Yoon felt the weight of inevitability settle over him. "They'll obliterate that ship," he said quietly. "A single vessel can't stand against even a fraction of their combined firepower." Han swallowed. "Sir, should we warn the humans?" And say what? Yoon asked. Turn around before the entire galaxy erases you. But even as he said it, he knew the humans wouldn't turn. The message they had broadcast still echoed in the air. We are responding to distress calls. Why? Why would a primitive species throw themselves into a war zone that even neutral observers avoided? Yoon forced himself to focus. Scan for civilian vessels. If the humans claim they heard a distress call, let's confirm it. Han's fingers flew. A moment later, the screen flashed with a new icon, far smaller and dimmer than the human ship. Found it, Han said. Coalition refugee transport Harmony's Dream, caught in an asteroid cluster. Hull breaches, failing life support, 43 civilians aboard. Yoon exhaled heavily. So it's true. The 3 alien fleets had ignored that beacon for 4 hours. Not out of cruelty, but because none of them cared enough to divert resources from their slaughter. Civilians in a war zone were considered casualties already, but somehow, a species the galaxy barely recognized on a ship they shouldn't have been able to build, traveling through a war they had no stake in, heard the call. And came anyway. Yoon stared at the display. The human vessel was flying straight toward the civilians, and straight into the jaws of 3 Apex-level war machines. They must know they're surrounded, he whispered. Sir, the fleets are sending messages, Han said suddenly. Hive, Nexus, and Void, all broadcasting simultaneously to the human ship. Yoon braced himself. Put them through. The audio filled the monitoring room like a storm. A shriek of chitin grinding echoed from the Hive Queen's flagship. Unknown vessel, you have entered our hunting grounds. Leave or be consumed. Then a resonant crystalline tone from the Nexus Emperor. Primitive ship, you disturb the harmony of our war. Withdraw or be reduced to atoms. Finally, a slithering hiss from the Void Admiral. Small craft, depart immediately or be dispersed into your base elements. Han winced at the overlapping threats. That is a united kill order. And the humans? Yoon asked softly. Han checked. Sir, they replied. He pressed a key. The calm, steady, human voice returned, impossibly confident. Negative. Civilians are in distress. We will not abandon them. If you wish to engage, you will have to go through us. Silence flooded the room. The Hive, the Nexus, the Void. 3 civilizations that had conquered star systems just got threatened by one ship from a species barely 300 years into FTL. 600 warships accelerated toward the human vessel. Yoon felt his pulse hammering. They're really going to face them. Han's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, what kind of species are humans? Yoon looked at the small green dot in the center of the display, moving fearlessly towards certain death. I don't know, he said, but we're about to find out. Captain Lee Day stood at the center of the Indomitable's bridge, surrounded by soft blue lights and the low hum of the ship's systems. Outside the viewport, the Kepler war zone stretched endlessly, a battlefield so vast and hostile that even the bravest species in the galaxy avoided it unless they had no choice. Explosions lit distant regions like dying stars. Hull fragments from thousands of ships drifted in silent, eternal spirals. Yet through this cosmic graveyard, the human ship cut a steady, unwavering path. There was no hesitation in the captain's stance, no fear in his eyes. If anything, he looked as though he were simply navigating through a storm he had weathered 100 times before. The contrast between him and the chaos around him might have seemed absurd to alien observers, but to his crew, it was familiar, comforting even. Captain, Navigator Kim So announced, her voice calm despite what her console displayed. We are now within long-range scanning distance of the Harmony's Dream. Life support is failing. Estimated survival time, 21 minutes. Lee nodded once. Distance? 18 minutes at current speed. We'll make it, Lee said simply. Weapons Officer Park Jin glanced over. Sir, enemy intercept predicted in 12 minutes. We'll still make it. The tone wasn't arrogance. It was resolve, made flesh. Around him, the rest of the bridge crew worked with the quiet precision of people who trusted their captain fully, and who trusted each other even more. It wasn't just training, it was culture. A culture born from centuries of crisis, ingenuity, and humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender to hopeless odds. For the crew of the Indomitable, impossible situations weren't deterrents, they were invitations. Chief Engineer Choi Min's voice crackled through the intercom. "Captain, all systems are stable, but if we're intercepting enemy fleets that early, I need to know if we're bracing for combat." Lee didn't answer immediately. He looked around the bridge, at Kim's focused eyes, at Park's steady hands, at the medical crew preparing below deck, at the faint tremor in the hull as the ship increased speed. "Combat is unavoidable," he finally said, "but our priority remains unchanged." He pressed a control on his chair, broadcasting his voice shipwide. "All hands, this is the captain. We are entering maximum threat conditions. Enemy fleets are converging. You know what that means." The ship quieted, as though every bulkhead and corridor were holding its breath. "There are civilians out there. 43 souls trapped in the middle of a war no one asked them to be part of. Children, families, survivors who believed we might hear their call." His voice deepened, carrying the weight of a promise made by an entire species. "The galaxy may have forgotten them. Their own governments may have abandoned them, but we don't leave people behind." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the comms, then silence. A unified silence, the kind that precedes a decision everyone has already accepted. Lee closed the channel. Dr. Nam, who had come up from the medical bay to brief him, stepped forward gently. She was small, focused, and radiated a calm that mirrored the captain's. "I've prepared for triage, but we may have casualties if the enemy fires on us during the approach. I've assigned 2 emergency teams to pressurize suits." Lee met her eyes. "You'll get them out. All of them." "I'll do everything possible," she said quietly. "I know you will." Kim's console chimed sharply. "Captain, Hive intercept in 11 minutes, Nexus in 13, Void in 14. All vectors converging." Park looked up. "Sir, they're surrounding us." "Of course they are," Lee said. "If they want to stop us, they need to." Kim hesitated before speaking again. "Sir, may I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Why us?" she asked. "Why send a single ship into a war zone like this? They could have sent a fleet. They could have sent backup. Why only the Indomitable?" The bridge fell quiet. It wasn't a question of doubt, but of genuine curiosity. Every crew member had wondered the same thing. Lee's expression softened, but only slightly. "Because sometimes," he said, "a fleet becomes a threat. A single ship becomes a message." Kim absorbed that slowly. "A message? That even in a galaxy that's tearing itself apart," Lee said, "someone still chooses to help." Park exhaled as though understanding suddenly flooded him. "We're here, so the galaxy can't pretend not to see." Lee nodded once. "And that, more than the advanced tech of their adaptive hull, more than the smart kinetics or the predictive navigation, more than any tactical brilliance, was the core of the mission. Humanity didn't enter the Kepler war zone as conquerors or opportunists. They entered as witnesses and protectors." "Captain," Kim said quietly, "enemy ships will enter short-range sensor range in 9 minutes." Lee straightened. His voice returned to its commanding tone. "Then let's give them something worth remembering." A faint tremor shivered through the deck as engines shifted to peak efficiency. The Indomitable accelerated, silver gleaming against the backdrop of drifting wreckage. Not swerving, not hiding, not slowing. Ahead lay an asteroid field filled with dying civilians. Behind them surged 3 armadas ready to annihilate them. And still, the human ship moved forward. No fear, no hesitation, no turning back. Because 43 strangers were waiting. And to humanity, that was enough. The Indomitable's bridge lights dimmed automatically as 3 incoming transmissions hit the comms simultaneously. Park Jin's console flared bright red. "Captain, all 3 fleet commanders are hailing us. Hive, Nexus, and Void, at the exact same time. Kim So muttered under her breath, "That can't be good." Lee Day didn't flinch. "Put them on." The main view screen split into three distinct panes, one for each civilization that had dominated this sector of space for millennia. Left pane, the Hive Queen. Queen Vex was a grotesque, awe-inspiring vision of evolution taken to extremes. Her body was an amalgamation of chitinous plates, bioluminescent sacs, and mechanical grafts humming with energy. 1,000 tiny insectoid eyes glittered across her face, each moving independently. Behind her, massive organic machinery pulsed, as if the ship itself were breathing. Her voice came through like a chorus of enraged insects. "Unknown vessel, you have entered our hunting grounds. Withdraw, or you shall be consumed." Right pane, the Nexus Emperor, a being of living crystal materialized in refracted starlight. Emperor Chris stood like a humanoid prism, his facets shimmering with dangerous intensity. Every twitch of his crystalline form sent rainbows scattering through the screen. He moved with elegance, an elegance that belied the destructive potential behind him. His voice resonated like glass struck by a tuning hammer. "Primitive craft, your presence disrupts the harmony of our war. Step aside or be reduced to your component atoms." Center pane, the Void Admiral. Admiral Nex's form was more suggestion than body. A swirling mass of plasma and electrical arcs drifting inside a containment field. His limbs shifted constantly, never quite settling into a stable shape. Lightning cracked silently along his surface, illuminating an alien face that was never the same twice. His voice hissed and roiled like venting air. "Small vessel, you trespass in our territory. Depart now or be dispersed into base energy." The bridge crew tensed. Every instinct screamed at them to feel fear. These were leaders whose fleets erased civilizations. They were ancient, experienced, vastly powerful. But Captain Lee Day stood perfectly calm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply spoke as if briefing a council meeting. "This is Captain Lee Day of the human vessel Indomitable." A pause, brief but powerful. "We have received a distress call from civilians trapped in this sector. We will render assistance." Queen Vex's mandibles clattered in disbelief. "We have heard of your species, human. Young, weak, barely spaceborne. Your ships are toys." Lee's features remained steady. "Our capabilities are not your concern. The lives of those civilians are." Emperor Chris leaned forward, his facets gleaming with calculative light. "You bring one ship, we bring 600. Elementary mathematics predicts your destruction with absolute certainty." Lee nodded slightly. "Perhaps." Nex flared with irritation, his plasma shifting colors. "There are no civilians here, only war. Your presence is an affront." "There is a transport ship called Harmony's Dream," Lee answered smoothly. 43 lives aboard. Several are children. Their life support will fail in minutes. We will not abandon them." The three alien commanders exchanged looks, not of alliance, but of unified confusion. The Hive fought for territory. The Nexus fought for order. The Void fought for expansion. But altruism? Risking annihilation for strangers? It didn't fit into their worldview. Queen Vex's voice sharpened. "If you approach the refugees, your ship will be devoured." Emperor Chris's light intensified. "You will be shattered into dust." Admiral Nex crackled with hostility. "You will cease to exist." Lee Day looked at all three alien warlords, leaders who commanded fleets capable of burning worlds, and delivered the single sentence that would echo across the galaxy for centuries. "Because it's the right thing to do." The Hive Queen froze. The Nexus Emperor's light dimmed. The Void Admiral's plasma flickered. There was no protocol for this, no logic to categorize it, no historical precedent to compare it to. Queen Vex recovered first. "You choose death." "Possibly," Lee said. Emperor Chris snarled in crystalline tones. "Your atoms will be scattered, maybe. Admiral Nex pulsed with disbelief. Why sacrifice yourselves for those who hold no value to you? Lee's answer was calm as starlight, because every life has value. The silence that followed was not simply lack of sound. It was the shock wave of three civilizations trying to comprehend an alien concept. A concept called humanity. One by one, the transmissions cut, leaving only the deep hum of the indomitable. Kim exhaled shakily. Sir, they're going to attack. Park Jin swallowed. All of them. Lee Day took his seat. Then let's get to work. The first shot came without warning. If something so massive could ever truly be called a shot, space itself seemed to ripple as a hive bioplasma organ, the size of a small house, contracted and fired. The weapon discharged a stream of corrosive green energy that twisted through vacuum like a living serpent. Park Jin's console lit bright red. Incoming bioplasma, multiple vectors. Kim So didn't wait for orders. Her fingers were already moving. Evasive patterns activated. The indomitable shifted, not in a sharp turn, not in a desperate roll. It flowed. The ship glided between the streaks of acidic light with an elegance completely unnatural for something built of metal. Bioplasma tendrils sliced past its hull, melting chunks of asteroid debris into glowing liquid pools. But the human vessel? Untouched. On the Hive flagship, chaos erupted. "My queen!" a tactical officer screeched. The human vessel, its movements do not correspond to any predictive model. Queen Vex's mandibles clicked in disbelief. No ship can anticipate bioweapon trajectories. Fire again. Full spread. 100 bioships obeyed instantly. An emerald storm filled the void, so dense that the entire region of space blazed like a miniature sun. Any other vessel, any ship in the known galaxy would have been dissolved instantly. But the indomitable danced. Kim So breathed in slow, controlled rhythm, her hands moving with uncanny precision. "Their weapons follow biological rhythms," she murmured. "Patterned firing. I can predict their next spread." Dr. Nam, clinging to her medical station as the ship rolled gracefully, stared. "You can what?" "Everything alive follows patterns," Kim said simply. "They evolved to fire this way." And she weaved the indomitable through a storm of death, as if the ship were reading the battle a heartbeat ahead of time. The Nexus Empire was next. Crystal dreadnoughts repositioned themselves into a perfect diamond formation, their surfaces shimmering with weaponized light. When they fired, it wasn't with beam weapons, it was with refraction. Pure, focused, atom-shredding energy shot outward in thin, precise lines. Lightspeed weapons. Unavoidable, undodgeable, inescapable. Impact in, Park began. The ship's hull changed. Pieces of the sleek, metallic plating rippled like liquid, morphing into smooth, translucent crystal. What is that?" Park shouted. "Adaptive armor." The Nexus beams hit, but instead of piercing through, they refracted across the hull, scattering into harmless rainbow arcs. On the Nexus flagship, Emperor Chris reeled backward. "Impossible!" His crystalline voice shattered in disbelief. "How does a primitive species possess crystal phase defense?" His science officer pulsed in confusion. "Emperor, the structure is not Nexus crystal. It is mimicking us, changing at the molecular level." "Adaptive armor?" Chris whispered. "Adaptive," the scientist confirmed. "It modifies its properties based on incoming energy." The Emperor's body flickered with rage and awe. "They have achieved in centuries what took us millennia." Then came the Void Confederation. Admiral Nex's plasma fleet surrounded the human vessel, shimmering like a storm of living stars. Their weapons fired destructive pulses of energized matter, plasma strong enough to turn starship hulls into vapor. A bolt struck the indomitable square on the bow. Instead of exploding, the ship absorbed it, literally drank it in. Energy. Choi Min's voice crackled in from engineering, half alarmed, half exhilarated. "Captain, their plasma is being redirected into our reactors. We're absorbing their shots as power. Park blinked hard. So, they're fueling us? Exactly. On the Void flagship, Admiral Nex's amorphous form twisted violently. Our plasma has no effect, he hissed. They consume our weapons. His tactical officer, a creature of crackling energy, responded in trembling static. Admiral, each shot we fire strengthens them. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Lee sat calmly, hands relaxed on his chair. Good, Lee said. Confusion buys us time. The ship surged forward, not attacking, not retaliating, still moving directly toward the trapped civilian vessel. Against the combined might of three great fleets, the human ship emerged untouched, an impossible silver arrow slicing through the firestorm. Inside the Hive fleet, panic. Inside the Nexus fleet, disbelief. Inside the Void fleet, fear. No one had ever seen anything like this. Not in thousands of years of galactic warfare. A ship that predicted Hive firing rhythms. A ship whose armor restructured itself mid-battle. A ship that absorbed plasma blasts. A crew calm enough to operate as though they were training, not dying. A ship that refused to fire back. That was the most terrifying part. The aliens were masters of war. They understood ships that fought to conquer. But a ship that fought purely to protect? That was something new. Something dangerous. A philosophy more powerful than a weapon. Kim So announced, Captain, we are halfway to the Harmony's dream. Park added, enemy fleets decreasing fire. They don't know what to do. Lee nodded. Then our job is working as intended. Dr. Nam stepped forward. Captain, our shields are untouched. Our hull integrity is perfect. Our reactor output has increased by 21%. She shook her head. Sir, we've survived dozens of full-scale volleys without a scratch. Lee Day didn't smile, but a faint shift in his expression suggested approval. We didn't survive, he said quietly. We endured, so they would learn. Kim turned in her seat. Learn what, sir? That humanity didn't come here to prove superiority. His gaze hardened. We came to show them what strength is for. The Indomitable accelerated, leaving behind three astonished armadas. Ahead lay the asteroid field. 43 lives, minutes from death, and humanity was coming. Strong, unbroken, unstoppable. Not because they sought conquest, but because someone needed help. Despite the chaos unfolding behind them, the Indomitable did not slow. The ship skimmed past drifting wreckage and splintered hulls as if guided by instinct. Every alien vessel in the sector had fired upon them. Hive, Nexus, Void. But none had broken through their defenses. And now, for the first time, Captain Lee Day allowed his crew to take the offensive. Not to kill, not to dominate, but to create space. To keep 600 warships at bay long enough to rescue the civilians trapped in the asteroid field. Mr. Park, Lee said calmly, prepare weapons. Park hesitated. Sir, are we engaging lethally? No, Lee answered immediately. Target weapons systems only. Disable, don't destroy. Park nodded, tension in his shoulders easing. Aye, Captain. Smart kinetics online. The ship seemed to inhale. Panels slid open along the Indomitable's hull, revealing sleek, metallic launch arrays. No glowing plasma barrels, no ornate crystalline emitters, no organic biolaunchers. Just simple, understated barrels shaped for one purpose: acceleration. Hive, Nexus, and Void officers watching from across the battlefield scoffed. Kinetic weapons? Primitive, obsolete, laughable. But then the Indomitable fired. There was no flash, no thunderous beam of light, just silver streaks, thousands of them, accelerating with unnatural speed. Park whispered, smart kinetics away. These weren't bullets. They were AI-driven projectiles, each equipped with micro-thrusters and adaptive prediction algorithms. They didn't fly straight, they bent, twisted, curved, and spiraled as they sliced through space with predatory intelligence. A Hive bioship opened its organic maw, preparing to swallow the projectiles. The first kinetic dart changed direction mid-flight, spiraling like a hunting hawk. It dove into the bioship's upper ridge and severed the nerve cluster controlling its weapons. The creature screamed, its voice transmitted across the hive network, before falling silent. Not dead, just disarmed. A Nexus crystal cruiser fired a refractive barrier. The smart kinetic projectile adjusted trajectory by a fraction, slipping between two facets of the ship's armor plating, slicing neatly through the conduit powering its main crystal cannon. The weapon went dark. No explosion, no hull breach, only silence. A void plasma vessel shimmered, phasing into semi-energy to avoid impact. The projectile flickered too, shifting its EM signature to match the gaseous state, passing harmlessly through non-vital plasma before re-solidifying inside the ship's weapon chamber. It released a micro-EMP pulse, disabling the firing matrix. Again, not destroyed, merely silenced. Across the sector, alien crew members froze. "What kind of weapons are these?" a hive officer shrieked. The Nexus Emperor's science officer pulsed in frantic colors. They think. They adjust mid-flight. They anticipate countermeasures. Admiral Nex's containment field crackled violently. This is not warfare. This is dissection. Yet aboard the Indomitable, the atmosphere remained calm. Park monitored the spread. "Captain, we've disabled 37 enemy weapons platforms. 0 casualties. 0 hull breaches on their side." "Good," Lee said. "Maintain minimal force. We are here to rescue, not to escalate." Choi Min chimed in from engineering. "Captain, smart kinetics are consuming almost no reactor output. The void plasma we absorbed earlier is still providing surplus power." Lee replied, "Efficiency is our ally. It keeps us focused on the mission." Kim So's eyes darted across her navigation screens. "Sir, enemy formations are shifting. They're trying to box us in again." "They're scared," Park muttered. "They don't understand what we're doing." "They don't have to," Lee said, "but they will." He stood, hands clasped behind his back as the ship surged forward once more. Behind them, the 3 alien fleets scrambled for cohesion. Their military doctrines, honed across centuries, were breaking apart in real time. No one had trained for this scenario. No one had prepared for an enemy that refused to kill. Yoon and Han, watching from the Coalition monitoring station, could only stare. Han whispered, "Sir, the human ship hasn't destroyed a single vessel." Yoon's voice trembled. "They're giving the alien commanders no excuses, nothing to retaliate with, nothing to justify escalating the conflict." "That's genius," Han said. "It's morality weaponized," Yoon replied softly, "and the galaxy has no defense against it." Park's console beeped sharply. "Captain, we're approaching the asteroid field. Enemy pursuit is thinning. They're falling behind, confused, or regrouping. We're gaining time." "Excellent," Lee said. "Prepare covering fire to keep them at distance." Park launched another volley of smart kinetics, each projectile moving with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a surgeon. Rather than damaging ships, they created a barrier of threat, a zone the alien fleets dared not cross. The message was clear: approach, and you will be stopped. Not killed, stopped. Kim announced, 3 minutes until we reach the Harmony's dream. Dr. Nam tight-hooked her gloves. Medical teams ready, the Indomitable glided into the asteroid field, silver hull reflecting shattered sunlight. Behind them, 600 warships hesitated at the edge of the rocks. Warriors defeated not by brute force, but by restraint. The human counterattack was complete. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to protect the window needed to save 43 lives. And as the alien fleets watched the human ship disappear into the drifting shadows of broken stone, one truth settled across the battlefield like dust. This was not the weaponry of a primitive species. This was the discipline of a civilization with a different purpose. A purpose dangerously unfamiliar to the rest of the galaxy, to fight only so they could save. The asteroid field loomed ahead like a shattered cathedral, its jagged stone walls drifting in slow, solemn circles. Light from a nearby star fractured against the spinning rock, casting fractured shadows across the hull of the Indomitable as it slipped deeper into the maze. Where any other warship would have seen only danger, Navigator Kim So saw patterns, rotations, velocities, gravitational interplay. Her voice was steady. Captain, adjusting vector by 3 degrees, matching asteroid drift, threading the gap. The Indomitable moved with uncanny grace, sliding between two massive boulders that scraped past its hull with only meters to spare. Behind them, the great armadas halted at the edge of the field, unwilling to follow into terrain where their bulk, doctrine, and pride became liabilities. Inside the Coalition monitoring station, Commander Yoon exhaled in awe. "They're doing it," he whispered. "They're really going in." Lieutenant Han shook his head. "Sir, no ship that size should be able to fly like that." Yoon didn't look away from the screen. No ordinary captain would even try. The Harmony's Dream appeared on sensors a moment later. A broken, flickering husk caught between tumbling asteroids. Its hull was cracked open in 7 places, emergency lights blinking erratically like a fading heartbeat. Bits of plating drifted freely around it, abandoned in weightless chaos. Kim So whispered, "God, it's barely holding together." Dr. Nam stood at the ready, the medical bay behind her filled with stretcher teams in pressure suits. "Captain, I'm picking up life signs, 43 total, several in critical condition, oxygen levels dangerously low. We have minutes, not hours." Lee Day nodded once. "Mr. Park, prepare docking procedures. Kim, bring us alongside." The Indomitable surged forward. As they closed the distance, the transport captain's panicked voice cut through static. "Human vessel, this is Captain Yu of the Harmony's Dream. Are you really coming to assist?" Lee responded immediately. "This is Captain Lee Day. We're here. Hold position. We'll dock with you in 3 minutes." 3 minutes that felt like 3 lifetimes. Inside the Harmony's Dream, the atmosphere was thin and cold. Families huddled together under emergency blankets. Parents clutched their children close, whispering words of comfort, even though their own eyes were full of despair. Among them was a small, crystal child, Little Song, her once bright crystal skin dimmed to a faint, fearful glow. She sat alone near the wrecked cargo bay wall, separated from her parents during the earlier hull breach. She looked up whenever the ship groaned, her small voice trembling. "Will someone come?" One of the refugee nurses shook her head sadly. "I don't know, sweetheart. We can only hope." Then the lights flickered, and a message echoed through the hall. "Harmony's Dream. This is the human vessel Indomitable, preparing to dock." The room stirred. A father gasped. A mother cried. Children looked up with newborn hope. "A human ship?" someone whispered. "Why would they come?" But hope was enough. The Indomitable attached with a precision that defied the chaos of the field. Magnetic clamps extended, locking onto the weakened transport. The docking tubes sealed with a hiss, compensating instantly for the pressure differential. Park announced, "Docking complete. Airlock secure." "Dr. Nam," Lee said, "you're up." The medical bay burst into action. Human crew members, doctors, medics, engineers, rushed into the docking tube carrying emergency oxygen, thermal blankets, portable field stretchers, and translation tablets. Their movements were confident but gentle, every step measured with purpose. When the airlock opened, the crew was met with 43 pairs of terrified eyes. Dr. Nam stepped forward, removing her helmet, her expression warm and steady. "My name is Dr. Nam," she said softly. "We're here to help. No one is being left behind." She didn't need to raise her voice. The sincerity in her words was enough to cut through the fear. The triage began immediately. A parent with a broken leg, a child showing signs of hypoxia, an elderly refugee with radiation exposure, a young technician delirious from dehydration. Each case handled with care. There was no discrimination, no prioritization by species, no hesitation. Just help Choi Min, sent to assess structural damage, found the little crystal girl still sitting alone in the corner. Her big, luminous eyes flickered faintly. Choi knelt down, her voice gentle. "Hey there, what's your name?" The child answered in soft, crystalline harmonics, almost like a whispering melody. "My name is Little Song." Choi smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful name. Little Song, I'm here to take you to safety. Where are your parents?" Little Song pointed weakly toward another section of the bay. "Lost. I can't find them." "We'll find them together," Choi promised, extending her hand. Little Song hesitated, then placed her tiny crystal fingers into Choi's. The moment her hand touched the engineer's glove, her crystal skin glowed a little brighter. A spark of hope regained. For 47 intense, chaotic minutes, the Indomitable stayed docked, completely vulnerable to attack. No shields raised, no weapons deployed, no evasive maneuvers. And yet, none of the three great fleets fired a shot. They watched instead. Watched as humans carried wounded alien children in their arms. Watched as humans handed out their own rations in emergency tanks. Watched as humans whispered reassurance to terrified strangers. It baffled them. It disarmed them. It humbled them. At last, the last refugees stepped aboard. Even Captain Yu refused to leave until everyone else had been evacuated. When he finally crossed the docking tube, he stopped before Lee Day. "My ship is dying," he said quietly. Lee nodded. "But your people are alive." Yu swallowed hard, eyes shining. "Because of you." Lee shook his head. "Because they held on long enough for us to find them." Then, with a slow sigh, the remains of the Harmony's dream drifted free. The cracked vessel shuddered, weakened by damage beyond repair, and finally broke apart amid the asteroid field, its last fragments sparkling like scattered petals in the void. Everyone aboard had been saved. As the Indomitable pulled away, carrying its new passengers toward the faint promise of safety, 600 alien warships stood in silent witness. For the first time in generations, the Kepler war zone had seen something other than death. It had seen humanity. The Indomitable drifted slowly out of the asteroid shadows, its hull lights dimmed to conserve power now that it carried more than twice its intended population. Refugees filled spare quarters, cargo compartments, and even corridors lined with makeshift bedding. The air was warm, dense with exhaustion, gratitude, and the echoes of quiet sobs, of those finally safe enough to cry. But outside the ship, the galaxy held its breath. 600 alien warships hovered beyond the asteroid field. Hive, Nexus, Void, arranged in a loose semicircle that glittered against the starlight. They weren't firing, they weren't advancing, they weren't even speaking. They were simply watching. Commander Yoon and Lieutenant Han observed the tableau from the Coalition monitoring station, neither daring to blink. "Sir," Han whispered, "the alien fleets, they're not pursuing." Yoon leaned forward, hands tense on the console. "No, they're not regrouping. They're observing." "Why?" Han asked, voice cracking. "They could have destroyed the human ship the moment it docked. They could have obliterated both vessels while the Indomitable was exposed." "Because," Yoon said slowly, "they just witnessed something they weren't prepared for." Aboard the Hive flagship, the chamber pulsed with the rhythmic beat of living machinery. Queen Vex stared at the screen showing the human ship, her many eyes narrowed. "My queen," a drone officer said hesitantly. "The human vessel, it abandoned its shields. It exposed itself to save civilians. It even surrendered its defensive posture." "Foolish," Vex chirred. "Illogical." But her voice wavered. Another drone added, "They offered medical aid to non-Hive children. We intercepted the transmissions. They risked death to protect strangers." Vex's mandibles clacked thoughtfully. "No species behaves this way. No species would, unless they were incapable of fear." The Hive mind rippled with confusion. Fear was a biological imperative. Fear kept living creatures alive. But humanity, in this moment, operated as though fear did not apply to them. It unsettled her. Across the sector, in the crystalline brilliance of the Nexus Empire's command ship, Emperor Chris stood frozen like a statue of fractured light. His science officer approached cautiously. Emperor, I have reviewed all data available. The human vessel remained docked for 47 minutes, leaving itself open to complete annihilation. Chris's facets dimmed, refracting dull violet hues. Why? Their mission was complete. They could have escaped as soon as the first refugees boarded. And yet, the officer said softly, they stayed. They stayed until every last individual had been evacuated, even those not of their own species. The Emperor turned slowly toward the viewport. Crystal species were logical, civilized, ordered. Their wars were fought with precision and purpose. But this reckless, self-sacrificial compassion had no precedent in their recorded history. He whispered, as though the word itself were foreign. Why? On the Void Confederation dreadnought, Admiral Nex's plasma form flickered with agitation. Admiral, his tactical aide crackled, the humans did not deploy counterstrikes beyond disabling weapons. Even when we fired a full spread at point-blank range, Nex's containment field pulsed. They did not retaliate because they sought no victory. Then what did they seek? The aide asked. Nex stared at the human ship, glowing steadily in the darkness. Rescue, he said slowly. A concept, unfamiliar to us. The aide hesitated. But Admiral, why leave themselves defenseless? Why risk total destruction for insignificant civilians? The Admiral's plasma swirled in unreadable patterns. Because to them, he said, no civilian is insignificant. And for the first time in the Void's long, violent history, their admiral felt something approaching guilt. Back on the Indomitable, Dr. Nam finished settling a wounded father and his daughter into a shared cot. She moved from room to room, checking vitals, distributing water, offering quiet reassurance in languages she barely spoke, but emotions she understood fluently. Captain Yu, now aboard the human ship, watched her with visible disbelief. Doctor, why do this? He asked. These people are strangers to you. Dr. Nam paused only briefly. Strangers, she said gently, are just friends we haven't saved yet. Yu felt the breath leave his chest. No alien species he knew spoke like this. No government taught this philosophy. He wondered, how did humanity become this? When he looked around the room, he saw human officers offering their own beds to refugees, engineers sharing rations with frightened children, medics kneeling beside wounded aliens as though they were family. For the first time that day, Captain Yu allowed himself to believe that his people would survive, not because of luck, but because of humans. Outside, the silence among the alien fleets grew heavier, deeper, more profound. They had witnessed a ship defy the laws of physics. They had seen it cripple their weapons without killing a single crew member. They had watched it withstand a barrage of overwhelming firepower. But none of that frightened them. What frightened them? What shook them? What made them hesitate to fire again? Was the realization that humans fought for something they themselves had forgotten. That humans risked everything, not for conquest, not for glory, but for mercy. And mercy, they realized, terrifyingly, was a kind of strength they had no defense against. The Indomitable emerged fully from the asteroid field, its hull illuminated by the glow of life restored. Inside, refugee children slept safely for the first time in days. Parents whispered prayers of gratitude. Wounded strangers found comfort at the hands of humans who treated them as equals. And 600 warships watched in a silence more deafening than any battle cry. The Kepler war zone, once a realm of endless death, had been transformed by a single act of compassion. And every alien commander knew nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The Indomitable moved clear of the asteroid field with slow, deliberate grace. Behind its reinforced hull, 43 refugees rested in makeshift quarters, their breathing shallow but steady. Medical crews navigated the corridors, monitoring vitals, adjusting oxygen flow, whispering quiet comforts. Even with the ship straining under the unexpected load, there was a sense of safety, of belonging, a fragile sanctuary in the heart of a war zone. But safety was a luxury that would not last. Kim So's console emitted a sharp tone. She glanced at her readings, and her eyes widened. "Captain, the fleets are moving again." Lee Day stepped toward the main viewport. The Hive, the Nexus, the Void. All three had reformed their lines, not in attack formation, but in a wall, a barrier, a living blockade between the indomitable and open space. "They're not firing," Park Jin muttered, "but they're not letting us leave either." Choi Min's voice came through engineering, strained. "Captain, we're running life support at 142% over capacity. The extra passengers are pushing filtration and oxygen flow to their limits. I can give you maybe an hour before systems start failing." Dr. Nam added from the medical bay, "We have injured civilians aboard. Children. They won't survive another shock or another depressurization event. We need to reach a coalition station immediately." Lee absorbed the information silently, his expression calm but sharpened by focus. A single ship, 43 lives on board, 3 armadas blocking escape, and no power to fight a real battle. Logic dictated retreat, surrender, negotiation at best. But Lee Day had never been a creature of logic alone. "Open a channel," he said. The main screen split once more into 3 panes. Queen Vex, Emperor Chris, Admiral Nex. All 3 looked different now. Not confident, not commanding, but unsettled. The Hive Queen's mandibles twitched. "Human Captain, your mission is complete. You have rescued the civilians. Why do you not flee?" The Nexus Emperor tilted his crystalline head. "Your vessel is strained. Your life support is failing. Logic dictates immediate withdrawal." The Void Admiral's plasma body rippled. "We offer safe passage. Return to your territory with your rescued civilians. You have earned departure." The offer bordered on unprecedented. 3 civilizations, deadly rivals, granting safe passage to an outsider. But Lee didn't accept. He looked at the 3 commanders with a quiet intensity. "Thank you for the offer," he said. "But before we leave, I need to know, what happens to the next ship caught in this war? The next family, the next group of refugees who send a distress call?" A ripple of confusion spread across all 3 alien faces. Queen Vex clicked angrily. "There will always be casualties in war." Emperor Chris's body dimmed. "Civilian losses are unavoidable side effects of conflict," Admiral Nex hissed. "War consumes the weak. This is natural law." Lee didn't raise his voice. He didn't glare or threaten. He simply answered with a steady conviction that hit harder than any weapon. "No, that's not acceptable. Not anymore." Behind him, the Indomitable's crew exchanged knowing glances. That tone, that resolve, they knew it well. Lee Day had made a decision. And when he made decisions like this, the galaxy changed. "You've been at war for 2 years, Lee continued. 2 years so focused on killing each other that you've forgotten why wars are supposed to be fought. You've forgotten the people you're meant to protect." Queen Vex recoiled as if struck. "You dare lecture us?" Chris flared in crystalline outrage. "Your species is young and naive. What can humans teach us about conflict?" Nex crackled with fury. "Your arrogance knows no bounds." Lee didn't flinch. "You're right," he said softly. "We're young. We haven't been in the stars long. But in that time we learned something simple. Something you've forgotten." The alien commanders spoke simultaneously. "And what is that?" "That strength means nothing," Lee said, "if it doesn't protect those who cannot protect themselves. That technology means nothing if it can't save lives. That the point of fighting is not conquest, not expansion, not glory." He leaned forward. "It's so children can sleep safely at night." The bridge went still. In the refugee quarters, families from 6 worlds listened with wide eyes. They didn't understand the military situation. They didn't grasp tactical positioning or political implications. But they understood the message. Someone was willing to fight for them, and that someone was human. But far beyond the indomitable, something else stirred. A ping, a data spike, a sudden surge across communications channels. Kim So checked her screen. Her jaw dropped. Captain, Commander Yoon's broadcast. It's being picked up by coalition forces. By all neutral systems. By private vessels. Sir, ships are responding. Ships from across the region. Yoon's voice echoed faintly through the comms. Captain Lee Day, your transmission is traveling across 50 light years. New icons appeared on sensors. Coalition vessels, merchant ships, independent explorers, medical carriers, rescue craft, even a few military ships from distant neutral systems. They were not approaching to fight. They were approaching to witness. This was no longer a private confrontation. This was a spectacle, a test, a moment on which galactic history hinged. The three alien commanders realized this instantly. Queen Vex stiffened. Human captain. The sector watches. Emperor Chris's form flickered. We cannot be seen as weak. Admiral Nex lowered his crackling aura. But we cannot be seen as monsters either. Lee Day spoke quietly. It doesn't matter how you're seen. What matters is what you do. His voice carried across the battlefield, across the region, across every ship now listening. I propose that this war ends here, not with a battle, with a choice. Queen Vex's mandibles stopped clicking. Emperor Chris dimmed into stillness. Admiral Nex dissolved into a calm, swirling glow. What choice? They asked. Choose to remember your people, Lee answered. Choose to remember the civilians caught in your crossfire. Choose to remember what you were before the war turned you into creatures of habit and hatred. He paused. Choose to stop. No threats, no ultimatums, no demands. Just a proposal. A human proposal. Silence followed. A silence thick enough to change the tides of fate. Then, a soft, crystalline voice broke through. Why are you fighting? Every head turned toward the screen. It was Little Song. Her small, frightened face stared into the cameras. Her crystal glow flickered with innocence and pain. Why are you breaking our homes? Why can't we go back? When will we be able to go home? Emperor Chris froze. It was one of his own people asking the question. A child. A refugee created by his decisions. Queen Vex and Admiral Nex received similar transmissions aboard their vessels. Children from their own worlds asking the same questions, their voices raw with fear. And suddenly, the warlords had no answers. Not for their officers, not for their people, not even for themselves. For the first time in years, they remembered why they had gone to war. Spoils, territory, resources, old grudges. But none of that had ever been worth the tears of children. Lee Day watched quietly. Then he spoke his final words of the confrontation. When you're ready, we'll talk. But for now, let us take these civilians to safety. The three fleet commanders exchanged a long, weighted silence. Queen Vex bowed her head. Emperor Chris dimmed in solemnity. Admiral Nex's plasma steadied into gentle light. And then, as one, they opened the path. The blockade dissolved. 600 warships parted like a split sea, making way for a single human vessel. Not out of fear, not out of defeat, but out of respect. A respect humanity had earned, not with weapons, but with compassion. The path cleared slowly, like a curtain being pulled aside by invisible hands. One by one, the Hive bioships shifted their vast, living bodies away. Crystal dreadnoughts drifted apart in shimmering arcs. Void plasma vessels dispersed into translucent clouds, creating a corridor wide enough for a dozen ships, yet made for only one. The Indomitable advanced at minimal speed, carrying 43 refugees cradled in fragile hope. Kim So whispered from the navigation console, Captain, they're giving us safe passage. Park Jin stared at the viewport. 600 warships parting for us. I don't know if this has ever happened before. Lee Day didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed ahead, toward the opening in the wall of ships, and beyond that, open stars. Stars that represented safety, possibility, and healing. Stay the course, he said quietly. The ship glided forward, engines humming softly under strain. Every system aboard was running at its absolute limit. Air recycling units pushed oxygen through overcrowded cabins. Climate control struggled to keep temperatures even. The mess hall had become a shelter. The cargo bay was now a medical ward. And yet, there was peace inside, a tired, quiet, fragile peace. In the central medical bay, Little Song sat next to her reunited parents, tiny, crystalline fingers clutching her mother's hand. Her glow was stronger now, softer, more hopeful. Dr. Nam knelt beside her, adjusting the nutrient patch on her arm. "You're safe," the doctor whispered. Little Song looked up. "Are you going home too?" Dr. Nam blinked, warmth and sadness mixing in her eyes. "We don't know where home will be yet, but wherever it is, we'll get you there." The child tilted her head curiously. "Humans save strangers. Does that make everyone your family?" Nam smiled. "Maybe it does." Back on the bridge, new readings appeared on Kim's screen. "Captain, additional ships entering the sector, coalition vessels, civilian transports, medical fleets, cargo haulers offering supplies." Her breath caught. "Sir, some of them are from species currently at war with each other." Yoon's transmission came over the comms. "Captain Lee Day, Coalition Command acknowledges your actions. Human vessel Indomitable. You are no longer alone." Lee nodded once. "Good to hear from you, Commander." Behind him, Park wiped sweat from his brow. "Sir, these ships, they're not armed for battle. They're here to help, to witness." Kim whispered, "Humanity just forced the galaxy to look at itself." "No," Lee corrected softly. "They chose to." The alien leaders connected once more. Queen Vex appeared, no longer bristling with aggression, but still powerful. Emperor Chris glimmered with fading sorrow. Admiral Nex's plasma shifted in slow, contemplative waves. Queen Vex spoke first. "Human Captain, your request to talk. Is it still offered?" Lee nodded. "It is." Chris's voice rang like a muted bell. "We have much to reconsider." Nex's form dimmed. "War has become habit, habit without purpose." Lee met their gazes. "Habits can be broken. Lives can be rebuilt." Queen Vex's mandibles clicked softly. "We have refugees of our own, camps scattered across ruined systems. Will the coalition, will humans assist them as well?" Lee did not hesitate. "If they need help, then yes." The Hive Queen bowed her head, not in submission, but in respect. Hours later, a joint rescue operation began. Hive bioships extended tendrils filled with medical gel. Nexus crystal ships deployed reflective beacons to light search zones. Void vessels phased into asteroid pockets to retrieve trapped survivors. Coalition medical craft spread across the war zone like a healing tide. And the Indomitable, small, battered, overburdened, served as the symbolic center of it all. For the first time in 2 years, Hive, Nexus, and Void crews stood side by side, not as enemies, as rescuers, as protectors. There was no formal treaty that day, no ceremony, no triumphant declaration. Instead, the war ended the way all wars should, with people helping people. Commander Yoon observed the rescue operations with a stunned awe he could not put into words. "Sir," Han whispered, "are we watching history happen?" Yoon swallowed hard. "Yes, Lieutenant. Humanity didn't just save 43 lives today. They changed the course of a war." "And the galaxy?" Yoon smiled faintly. "The galaxy will never forget this." When the last refugee was secured and the war zone finally drifted into quiet, Lee Day gathered his bridge crew. They looked exhausted, drained physically and emotionally, but their eyes held something stronger than fatigue. Purpose, unity, pride. "We're leaving the Kepler sector," Lee said softly, "but what we did here will outlast us." Park nodded. "Sir, they'll talk about this for generations." Kim So added with a tired smile, "They'll rethink what humans are." Lee glanced at the viewport, the place where 600 alien warships had parted for them. "No," he said, "they'll rethink what they can be." As the Indomitable moved toward the coalition convoy that would escort it to safety, A final transmission echoed across every ship in the region. A warning, a legend, a promise. Caution, a human warship has entered the war zone. But now, those words meant something new. They no longer whispered fear. They no longer signaled destruction. They no longer promised violence. They meant hope. Hope that someone would come. Hope that someone would fight for the weak. Hope that no one, not a single child, not a single family, would ever be abandoned again. Because that was the human way. And after the Kepler War, it became the galaxy's way too.